On today's episode of Monetize the Mic, I am joined by the one and the only Jennifer Chapman, one of our incredible clients at Interview Connections. I'm going to tell you a little bit about her. So, Jennifer used to be a workaholic known as the go-to person for getting things done and managing the most difficult clients at a Fortune 500 consulting firm. She thrived in challenging situations, proving to others time and time again that she was invincible. Eventually, Jennifer's mental and physical health began to suffer, so she decided to create a new professional and personal life that aligned with what she valued most. I think that's something we can all relate to as entrepreneurs. She created the job she wants and a new independent confidence, and she continues to bring her authentic self into all of her work. She is more successful in terms of happiness, financial security, and her ability to help others than she has ever been. So today, she is an expert leadership coach working with STEM managers and leaders who want to increase productivity and performance by strengthening their confidence and people skills. And when she isn't developing the next generation of influential leaders, she can be found spending time with her husband and 5 children. So, she's got lots of time to relax and hitting the trails with their beloved English Springer Spaniel, Brutus. I love it. Welcome to the show, Jennifer.
Oh, thank you. It's great to be here.
Yeah. So tell me, I gotta ask the most obvious question, right? You found this balance. You have 5 kids and a dog and a business. How do you find time to relax? What are your secrets?
Well, I am not going to lie. It is a constant struggle. And the nice thing is the more I practice it, the easier it is to recognize when I'm getting sucked back into that I'm invincible and my body reminds me, oh, no, you're not. But one thing I did this year was for Mother's Day. Mother's Day is kind of a funny day because our kids, make us quote breakfast in bed and destroy the kitchen in the process. And and it seems like with all the good wishes or whatever, it never really is that relaxing day. And I had this idea this year that I thought I am going to make Mother's Day the day I want it to be. So I planned a happy Mother's Day to us party, invited like 6 friends, and we had takeout. And I was going to use paper plates, but my husband offered to wash the china. So we got china out and had a great dinner. And then I hired 2 massage therapists, and they brought their massage chairs, and everybody got a 20-minute massage. And then we did a little gift exchange. And then we topped off the night with our very own pints of Ben and Jerry's ice cream. It
Oh
was
my gosh.
so fantastic.
That's
And
awesome.
they're like, are we doing this again next year? And then it was, how about quarterly?
I
So
love that.
I'm already starting to plan one for the weekend after school starts, because that week is always so crazy. And I think, I have to plan things and have to carve out my time. I find my husband's incredibly supportive if I ask, and I just don't think to ask sometimes. So I think the boundaries and the self-care, it all comes from prioritization, planning it out, and really taking ownership that you can have what you want if you make the time and plan for it.
Oh, I completely agree with that. I mean, I know I've had that conversation. I've heard that conversation had with other moms on podcasts, right? Where it's not that our spouses are not okay with us taking the time to ourselves and to relax. It's that we have a hard time doing that, right? And I mean, I can relate. I just got off a few days of a cold, and I asked you like, hey, can we move this interview one day? Like I felt so bad like rescheduling with people, but I needed that time to rest. Like I had to have like multiple people tell me to like, permission to pause. Like you have to, find that space to relax and like let yourself heal. I think that's something that moms cannot hear enough because we need to constantly be reminded.
Well, and I
So
love what you said to me yesterday. You said
yeah,
that you flipped it around and thought, what advice would I give to my friend? And that
exactly.
is such a great way to do it. And people ask me, well, do you coach yourself? Because you're a coach. Yes, all the time. And I pretend that, okay, if I were a client, what would I be saying to myself right now? And it really is amazing to stop and ask yourself that. How would I be comforting a friend? Or if I had heard a friend with that negative self-talk, what would I say to her? And it's really helped me to get a handle on how I should be treating myself and thinking of myself, because I'm a lot kinder to my friends than I am myself.
Oh, it's so true. And that's it's also so like why you need a coach because I'll say to myself like this is what I would tell a client or a friend and then still need to hear it from a coach because there is, every coach needs a coach. And so you are a leadership coach. So very good segue in here to talking about your leadership coaching. And I love that you work with STEM managers and leaders. Talk about why STEM is the industry that you specialize in. Like, what is different or unique about STEM managers and leaders that has you feel called to support them in their leadership?
One thing I noticed earlier on in my career is that I get along really well with scientists and technological experts, engineers. I'm married to a mechanical engineer, finance people, and I believe it's the overlap. I'm very task focused, as they are. I'm very logical, and that's different from a lot of coaches. A lot of coaches are more into the people side and the relationships, and they gravitate towards people in those fields and those industries. And when I started recognizing I had some kind of a magic gift, I guess, of working with these really task oriented focused people, that I thought, why not specialize in it? And I've loved it because I've found it incredibly rewarding. I work with type A personalities who want to get stuff done, who the people side is almost an afterthought, if it is a thought at all.
Mhm.
And but they reach a point in their career where they realize, I am getting stagnant and I am not going to move up unless I figure out how to deal with the people side. And there was actually a study that was done shortly before the pandemic, talking to HR people in the hiring processes when they do recruiting and so forth. And it was something like 78% of these HR leaders said that they had become focused on finding technology employees with soft skills. And so for, in this market right now that's ultra competitive, if you want to know how to differentiate yourself, how you're going to move up, how you're going to get that job, the thing that's going to differentiate you, who did so great in your engineering program compared to the
Mhm.
next person who did, is, can you work with people? Can you have the difficult conversations? Do you know what to do when there's conflict? Can you
Mhm.
mentor effectively without making people feel like they're an idiot? Which, when you're really intelligent and some people are newer in their careers, it's easy to come off condescending. So that's what I do. I love working with people who say, hey, I could be better at this. I don't know where to start. Help.
Mm. That yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I have several engineers in my family and I can definitely see every like the picture you just painted of you know they're so intelligent and they're so task focused and it's a little bit difficult to train new people because it's like come on like why don't you just know how to do this so can you give some examples of soft skills that you help your clients improve upon?
Yes. So I would say how to influence people is a big one, or how to get buy in. And a story I like to tell is picking on my husband a little bit, but he started a job several years ago, and I think within the first couple weeks, noticed that there was a software that they were using that was archaic, and they'd used it for quite some time. Everybody thought it was fantastic and getting stuff done. My husband was like, there's these inefficiencies, there's things that are we're doing double the work and miscommunication. And there was a meeting, and at this meeting, my husband raised his hand and said, "We need to do something about this system because," and then listed all these things I just listed off. And he was met with stunned silence. And the people in the room were the ones who had advocated for that software program in the first place. So he's like, I don't know why they didn't just see why my way was better. And I said, sweetheart, you stood up in front of a room and you called everybody in there an idiot. Like, well, I didn't. Well, that was implied, right?
Right.
And so then his response back was, well, I am who I am, and I'm direct. And I said, and how is that working out for you? And he didn't understand what I meant by that. And it took him a couple of months. And then he came back to me and he said, I see what you mean. I'm still frustrated. Nobody's listening to my ideas. I now understand I need a way to speak to people to help them see why I'm advocating for a position without being condescending, without hurting feelings. And I know a lot of people go, feelings, well, that shouldn't matter. It absolutely does. Absolutely. So the key is figuring out what people issues are getting in the way of you getting what you want, and then figuring out how to not from a fake perspective. How do you authentically develop those relationships with people and build that relationship of trust, so then they're going to get on board and excited about the things that you have in mind.
Oh my gosh. That makes so much sense how somebody like people that room full of people really connected to that system, that idea that they put out, right? And so there was this ownership and this like attachment to it. And then your husband comes in, he's like, this is so stupid, so then they're probably thinking he thinks I'm stupid, not
Right.
the system, because people just attach. So can you talk a little bit more about how you teach someone about, because it's this like intent versus impact. He didn't go in there and look at them in the face and say you are stupid, but he called their system stupid, and so then they attach to it. So talk a little bit more about your process when you're coaching somebody, how you help them like see the difference between what they're saying, their intent of what they're saying, and the impact and how it's being received.
Great question. And I find that a lot of very task focused individuals don't have a lot of empathy. And
Mm.
empathy is a really interesting word, because I think we hear the word empathy and we think, crying on someone's shoulder with them and get the
Right.
tissues out. And that turns off a lot of people, because, like, I don't want to get into the touchy feely
Mhm.
realm. And that's not necessarily what empathy means. Empathy is the ability for you to step out of your own shoes and try on someone else's shoes and see it from a different perspective. And when you think about the best leaders, they're the ones who can step into so many different shoes, and they can think
Right.
about, how is this going to impact my most junior employees? How is this going to impact the janitor? How is this going to impact payroll? How is this going to impact the shareholders and the clients and the customers? And it's going to be a key attribute to success in really any industry. So you can start small by, let's say there is somebody at work that you have a hard time working with. And so if you stop and think, okay, what is my objective? What is it I'm trying to accomplish? And
Mhm.
then flip to being in their perspective. What is it at the end of the day they're trying to accomplish? What's their mission? And sometimes when you think about it that way, you can see, you know what, we're actually aligned on the same thing. We both are trying to accomplish the same task. And then once you find that commonality, that's where you build from. Okay, so I want to get this done. You want to get this done. And what's different is probably the how it's going to get done, or maybe the timing that it's going to get done. And then that's when you can have a real conversation about, how do we collaborate and work together so we both achieve what it is that we're wanting to have happen.
Yeah. Yeah. Because the most powerful and effective leaders, the ones that we love being led by, are the leaders who really understand and have empathy. Like they understand where their team is coming from and what their team wants and what their team values, right? Because when you can step into their shoes, you're able to then see things from their point of view, anticipate the questions that they'll have so you can proactively answer them. And then everyone's enrolled and on the same page and like working towards the same mission.
Exactly. And one thing I learned when I was managing a few different teams of people is your example speaks volumes, and this comes back to this idea of empathy. I would tell my team members that I wanted them to have work-life balance, and I was sending emails at 11 o'clock at night or working on a Saturday morning, and I didn't expect anybody to respond. I was just getting stuff off my plate. And one time, it was a Friday afternoon, and I gave a junior employee a task and said, hey, I need you to take care of this, and I need this done by Monday afternoon. And I thought by saying that, I made it clear that you can work on it on Monday and everything's fine. It was in my inbox on Saturday morning. And our first question, of course, is, Jen, what were you doing on your work email at Saturday morning? And I saw it and I felt terrible because I knew the work that was required into what I'd given him. And I realized he probably had stayed up until 2 or 3 in the morning to get that to me on Saturday morning. So I didn't say anything at the time, but the next Monday I called him into my office and said, why? What was this? I didn't want you to spend the weekend doing it. And he said, well, I knew that's what you would have done.
Wow.
And boy, did that hit me hard. And I thought, okay, so in my head, I've been saying it's okay for me to have these super high standards, but I don't expect it from everybody else. But the actions speak so much louder than words. And so then once I was able to see it from his perspective, well, he wants to move up in the organization. He wants to be my go-to guy. He's going to emulate my behavior. It made me look at my own behavior and what do I need to do differently? And then I could be much more empathetic to what I was asking my team to do, how I communicated deadlines and expectations. It changed everything.
Wow, that's such a good example. And I've definitely learned that lesson, right? Like I've learned that as a leader, I have to there's two things here that I got from your story. There's mirroring, right? There's that it's not just what you say, it's actually what you're doing. This came up in a mastermind group that I'm in. Someone's like, my team, they complain about like, having to work nights and weekends, but I never tell them they have to. And the first thing I said to her was, do you work nights and weekends? And she's like, well, of course I do. I'm like, well, then that's why they are, right? Is so there's the mirroring, right? It's not just do as I say, it's often do as I do, is like the unspoken. And then there's the giving clear, which you did do, is like the deadline, because that's something that I often like have to be reminded of. If I tell my team like, hey, can you do this? I have to remember to say, this is when I want it done by. Because if I don't, they'll feel like they have to drop everything and do it that day. And it's like, there's just like this pants on fire emergency. So I have learned time and time again, like I have to say, this is not urgent. This can be done anytime in the next month, like you could schedule it in. But I think the mirroring thing is so huge. And the other area that I see that important is in your goals and what you want for yourself. Like we've put in like incentive plans in place for the majority of our staff because, hey, if we want to make a lot of money personally as the owners, we want that for our team too. And then we're like kind of all on this journey together.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I just think that mirroring is so important. Is there anything else you want to share about like the mirroring? Because I just think that's a huge topic in and of itself, kind of leaders saying one thing and doing another. And then there's this whole miscommunication.
It is. Well, I was thinking as you were talking about the more you take care of your team, which a lot of it will come from example, the more loyal your team will be to you. And a continuation of the story I had just told is after I started modeling better work-life boundaries and being more clear in my expectations with my staff, I noticed that they did a much better job of maintaining their work schedules. And I was very conscientious of workloads. And granted, there's always times, I don't care who you are, there will be times throughout the year where it's all hands on deck, maybe pulling an all-nighter, any resource you can grab for putting out a fire, some new opportunity comes, whatever it might be. And let me tell you, when I really put a priority on the well-being of my team, when I needed them to pull the all-nighters or to work 14-hour days for a week, whatever it might be, they did so without complaining, and I'm not even kidding. because they knew I wouldn't ask if it weren't absolutely necessary, and that I didn't ask them to do it very often. So when I said, okay, I need you, they did it and came through for me every time. And I love using that story when I talk to very task focused individuals who are like, I don't have time to deal with the people stuff.
Mhm.
You don't have time not to,
Mhm.
because you've got, at the end of the day, you've got to have people you can depend on, who you trust, who trust you. And that's not going to happen unless you're investing in these relationships on a daily basis.
Yeah, no, that's so powerful. So, Jen, people that need help with the soft skills, like they're listening and they know they are that person that is so task oriented. They don't have time for the people stuff, but it's clearly a pain point for them. Like it's not natural. It's not a natural ability for them to be empathetic and really like do the team soft skill stuff. And they need your help. How can they find you online? How can they get your help?
I have a website, which is www.ambitionleadership.com. And the homepage has a couple different offers that people can take a look at. And I'm also hosting monthly leadership roundtables. They're the first week of each month, and that's under the events page of my webpage. So I'd love to have you join and try out one of those roundtables.
Tell us more about the roundtables. What are they? Are they on Zoom? Tell us more.
Yes, we do them on Zoom, and it is usually a gathering of between 6 and 14 leaders all across different industries and different management levels. And we start with a topic like how to get buy-in. Maybe, for example, I'll start by teaching a few success tips that I've found helpful. And then we open it up for conversation, and people can, hey, I'm dealing with this right now. And it turns into kind of a peer coaching with me moderating and guiding the conversation. And it's been really a fun way to get to know people, especially to connect outside of our organizations during this very weird time. And
Yes.
and then people walk away with ideas of things that they can try that they hadn't thought about before. So that I love having different people in and getting new ideas and new personalities in there.
Amazing. I love that. That sounds awesome. So go to ambitionleadership.com and then click on the events tab, and you will see a place where you can register for the next roundtable, which sounds incredibly valuable. So thanks so much, Jen.
Thank you, Jessica.
All right. Thanks everyone for listening to today's episode of Monetize the Mic.